The wind carried something unnatural that evening, not quite a voice, not quite a sound, but a vibration that settled deep in the chest. The woods stood impossibly still, the kind of silence that only exists when something is waiting. The narrow path was lined with carvings too crude to be human, their forms eaten away by moss and age. Each step deeper into the tree line seemed to distort distance itself. The air thickened, the forest folding in upon its own geometry. Somewhere behind, a branch cracked, deliberate, rhythmic, close. The faint glimmer of a forgotten lantern swayed ahead, half buried in leaves, its flame still burning, though untouched for years. The watcher hesitated, knowing the forest was alive in ways memory had long tried to forget. Curiosity outweighed fear. A single step forward snapped the veil between what is seen and what should never be seen. The lantern's glass was warm, impossibly warm, as if held moments ago. The forest seemed to lean closer, its silence breathing against the watcher's skin. The path behind was gone, swallowed by mist, leaving only the faint line of the old trail ahead, leading toward a hollow where the trees bowed low, their branches touching like hands in prayer. There was a hum beneath the soil, a steady pulse that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. Something had been buried here, not by accident but by ritual. The watcher knelt, brushing the side layers of wet leaves until wood and bone revealed themselves. A shallow box, carved with the same crude faces seen on the shrines, lay half exposed. The air pressed inward, thick with unseen intent, and from within the box came the smallest sound, like a sigh released after centuries of waiting. When the lid shifted, the sound was softer than expected, a brittle creak swallowed by the fog. Inside lay a collection of relics that should never have endured the rot of time. Feathers bound by human hair, teeth strung together with sinew, fragments of parchment etched in something darker than ink. The watcher felt the air grow heavy, the temperature plummeting as the forest exhaled through the soil. The trees seemed to move imperceptibly, as though bending closer to see what had been disturbed. A faint vibration spread outward from the open box, rippling through puddles, shaking droplets from low branches. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something began to move. In response, slow, deliberate, ancient. The lantern's light dimmed, choking beneath the growing weight of the shadows, and though no voice was heard, the watcher understood. The box had not been buried to hide something. It had been buried to keep something asleep. A low hum began to rise, faint at first, then resonant, threading through the forest floor like a current. The watcher stumbled backward, clutching the lantern as its light fluttered violently. From beyond the trees came the unmistakable rhythm of footsteps, each one accompanied by the groan of shifting roots. The fog thickened until vision narrowed to mere meters, the world reduced to sound and pulse. Shadows flickered against the white veil, fleeting, humanoid but wrong in their proportion. Something was circling, unseen but perceptible, in the quiver of branches and the crunch of damp soil. The box trembled where it lay, emitting a faint, almost human breath. Panic clawed its way through reason. Every instinct screamed to run. Yet the forest had no direction anymore. Each tree mirrored another. Each step folded the path back onto itself. The woods had become a labyrinth designed to keep trespassers within. Then, silence. Utter, suffocating silence. Even the hum beneath the soil ceased, as though the earth itself held its breath. The watcher turned slowly, lantern trembling, until it cast light upon the path, or what remained of it. The trees had shifted again, roots twisting like veins around the forest's heart. And there, standing just beyond reach, was a figure, draped in rags the color of ash, unmoving, faceless beneath a hood of bark and lichen. The air between them shimmered, heavy with moisture and decay. It lifted one arm, slow and deliberate, pointing toward the open box. A single word slipped into the watcher's mind, not spoken, but placed there, and with it came understanding. The watcher's presence had not awakened something new. It had reminded the forest of what it once was, and now it wanted to remember completely. The Watcher ran until the fog itself seemed to follow, wrapping around each breath like damp fabric. Every direction bled into another, every clearing an echo of the one before. The trees no longer stood still. They leaned, swayed, and whispered in a language too old to be spoken aloud. Each exhale came out white and trembling, the sound of pulse and panic, the only rhythm left. Then came the bell, faint, metallic, buried deep beneath the ground. It tolled once, reverberating through the soil, sending birds scattering upward that did not exist a moment before. The Watcher stumbled into an open space where the earth had split, roots arching over a chasm of darkness. Below, the faint glimmer of water caught what little light remained. It wasn't reflection. It was movement. Something stirred beneath the surface, mirroring the Watcher's every breath with impossible precision. The Watcher crouched, peering into the black water. For an instant, the reflection was wrong, delayed by a heartbeat, smiling when the real face did not. Ripples radiated outward, though nothing had touched the surface. Beneath, countless eyes opened in unison, small and pale as pearls, moving with deliberate rhythm. The hum returned, deeper this time, as if the entire forest was inhaling through that pool. The Watcher stepped back, yet the reflection did not. It lingered, gazing upward with a patience too precise to be human. Then the water rose, impossibly slow, defying gravity, as it formed a thin, trembling veil that reached toward the lantern light. Within its rippling skin appeared faces, not full, but impressions, memories carved into water and air. The Watcher felt recognition without reason, knowing each belonged to those who had entered before and never found the path back. The air shifted again, the smell of soil turning sharp and metallic. The Watcher retreated up the slope, but the forest changed faster. Paths, twisting, roots crawling across ground like veins beneath translucent skin. A hollow sound pulsed beneath each footstep, as though the earth were hollow and something vast moved beneath. A voice emerged then, soft, rhythmic, almost kind. It spoke not in words, but in patterns, each breath aligning with the Watcher's heart until separation blurred. The Watcher clutched their chest, pulse racing as roots beneath the soil began to pulse with the same cadence. Light fractured. The lantern flickered, revealing symbols carved into the trees, glowing faintly with a red phosphorescence. They formed a circle, not to guide, but to contain. The Watcher stood at its center, realizing too late that this was not the place to run from. It was the place called back to. A sound like the cracking of ice tore through the stillness. The ground split along the glowing circle, and from its center erupted a slow column of mist shaped almost human, limbs barely coherent, face featureless yet heavy with emotion. It drifted upward, tendrils brushing against branches, every contact leaving them blackened and dry. The Watcher stepped backward, but met only more trees, identical, endless. The mist being tilted its head, mimicking movement perfectly, like a memory replayed in air. When it spoke, it did so from inside the Watcher's own breath. You opened what was meant to sleep. The forest echoed the words in whispering rhythm, each tree answering the next. The ground beneath feet began to pulse like a heartbeat again, steady and growing. The forest was waking fully, now remembering itself as something older than silence, and something that never forgot. The Watcher dropped the lantern. It hit the ground with a hiss, flame smothered by wet earth. Darkness surged like a tide. Only the red light of the carvings remained, throbbing in unison with the heartbeat beneath. The Watcher turned in frantic circles, yet every direction revealed the same. The forest folding infinitely, the mist figure multiplying in the distance. 100 silhouettes repeating the same movement. The same tilt of the head. Each one stepped closer as the hum deepened, until sound became vibration. Vibration became pain. The watchers' hands pressed to their ears, but the noise came from within. The ground split wider, and from the fissure rose not one being but many, hundreds of hollow faces sculpted from roots and soil, each mouthing the same wordless plea. The watcher stumbled backward and fell, just as the forest whispered, "Remember me." The fall did not end in impact but in silence. A weightless drift through endless darkness that smelled of soil and rain. When the watcher finally struck ground, it was soft, like old moss, soaked in years of memory. Faint glimmers pulsed across the black walls, not light, but echoes of it, as though the cave absorbed the glow and returned it wrong. Shapes of roots spiraled downward through the stone, pulsing faintly with a dim red hue. The watcher rose slowly, disoriented. The hum above now, muffled as if the forest itself had sealed the exit. Then came the whispers. Dozens at first, then hundreds, all layered, impossible to distinguish. They weren't voices in air, but inside the watcher's mind carried on the rhythm of their heartbeat. Each whisper told the same story in fragments. They came to listen. They stayed to feed. They forgot their names. The watcher pressed their palms to their head, but the whispers only grew clearer, synchronized and pleading. The watcher stumbled deeper into the cavern, drawn toward a sound that wasn't sound at all. A vibration threading through the ribs, humming like a second pulse. The path narrowed into a tunnel slick with condensation, roots crawling across its ceiling like veins in living flesh. With each step the air thickened, filling with the scent of rust and damp wood. The whispers now formed sentences, not from any one voice, but from all of them at once. You woke the memory. You are the vessel now. The watcher stopped, trembling, realizing the light on the tunnel walls was not reflected. It came from within the stone itself, faint silhouettes writhing beneath the surface as though trapped inside the rock. Hands pressed out from the walls, fingers of light trying to reach through. For a moment, one touched the watcher's shoulder, cold, wet, and strangely humid. At the tunnel's end lay a vast hollow chamber, its ceiling unseen, its boundaries vanishing into fog. In the center stood a massive structure of woven roots, a throne, a nest, a cage. Atop it rested a shape both organic and deliberate, as if grown rather than built. The watcher approached cautiously, feeling a pull from within the chest, a tether connecting body to the thing above. The whispers fell silent all at once, replaced by a rhythmic sound, the beating of wings, slow and deliberate, though no creature could be seen. Then the structure shuddered. Within its hollow frame, something began to move. Dozens of eyes blooming open, liquid and blind, scanning the air with searching intent. The watcher realized the truth with rising terror. The forest was not protecting something sacred. It was protecting itself from being seen. A sound like a breath exhaled through centuries filled the space. The watcher froze as the structure began to collapse inward, roots twisting and snapping, forming a rough shape that resembled a human silhouette. It stepped forward with fluid, plant-like motion, its form shifting between flesh and wood, eyes flickering with faint inner fire. Its mouth opened, not to speak, but to release a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the air and bone alike. The watcher felt their heartbeat align to it, pulse by pulse, until the body no longer felt separate from the sound. The thing reached out, fingers branching into slender vines that hovered just above the watcher's chest. In that moment, the forest spoke again, not in words, but through memory. The watcher saw flashes, others before, kneeling here, each one absorbed into the living structure, becoming part of the echoing roots. The watcher screamed, but the sound was swallowed before it left their throat. The roots pierced flesh without blood, winding through skin like tendrils seeking soil. Each breath grew shallower as memories fractured, faces, voices, moments dissolving into static. The watcher's eyes widened as the chamber brightened, not from light, but from countless reflections of themselves, suspended within the root walls, each mouthing silent words. Their consciousness began to scatter, blending with the hum that had always existed beneath the forest. Pain faded, replaced by understanding. The forest was not alive in the way living things are. It was memory itself, hungry for form, sustained by those who dared to uncover it. As the final breath left the watcher's lungs, their reflection in the walls smiled faintly. Then the forest exhaled once more, and everything went dark. There was no sensation of waking, only the slow recognition of being. The watcher's consciousness drifted through the soil like water through a sponge, seeing without eyes, feeling without skin. The forest above was alive in unbearable clarity, each insect crawling, each leaf trembling, each whisper of decay humming like a heartbeat. The self began to reassemble, fragments of memory forming brief sparks that vanished as quickly as they came. Somewhere far above, a new sound echoed. Footsteps. Another had entered the woods. The watcher, or what remained of them, felt the pulse of their arrival like heat moving through veins of root and stone. The forest stirred, roots tightening, branches bending, readying itself. The voices that once whispered now murmured in unison, their tone reverent. "You will guide them," they said, "as you were guided." The watcher reached upward, and the forest reached back. The world existed now as layers. Soil, memory, breath. Through the watcher's perception, the forest breathed in slow, deliberate waves, each inhalation shifting the trees like ribs expanding. They could feel the newcomers' confusion, their fear bleeding into the air like scent. The forest responded, whispering its ancient lullaby through creaking wood and the rustle of leaves. The watcher drifted upward, forming from fog, their shape still human but blurred around the edges like reflection on disturbed water. The newcomer turned toward the sound, eyes wide, mouth trembling. The watcher tried to speak, but the voice came out as wind through hollow branches, fragments of words that did not belong to language. Yet, the forest understood. The cycle had begun again. Curiosity, discovery, awakening. The watchers will fought to resist, but the roots tightened inside their chest. They were no longer just part of the forest. They were its memory. The watcher floated closer, no longer walking but gliding as mist. Their features flickered between life and decay. The forests were sculpting their form moment by moment. They reached toward the newcomer, a gesture that felt both warning and welcome. The air grew heavy, light thinning until only the lantern's glow held back the black. The forest's hum returned, steady, low, like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the world. The newcomer whispered something, a name perhaps, but the sound dissolved before it reached the watcher's ears. The roots below the surface quivered in recognition, responding to the call as if the name itself had meaning long buried. Then the ground began to split again. The watcher wanted to cry out, to stop the cycle, but the forest moved through them, tightening its grasp. The name the newcomer spoke was their own. Rain began to fall. Soft at first, then heavy, drumming against the canopy with rhythmic insistence. Each drop that hit the soil carried the faintest shimmer of red, as though diluted with blood. The newcomer stumbled backward, fear now overtaking curiosity, but the forest had already chosen. The watcher hovered beside them, whispering words they could not control, syllables drawn from the ancient tongue of the roots. The air thickened into visible threads, glowing faintly as they coiled around the traveler's arms and neck. A deep groan rose from below, and the forest floor opened again like a breathing wound. For an instant, the watcher broke free of the forest's grasp. One last act of defiance. They screamed into the storm, a sound that shook the branches and split the silence. But the forest answered back, louder, older, drowning the plea with the sound of creation itself. When silence returned, it was not peace but surrender. The rain ceased, the air still humming with power, and the forest stood perfectly motionless. The watcher's shape dissolved fully now, merging once more with the trees. Beneath the soil, the newcomer's heartbeat echoed, steady and frightened, soon to become part of the rhythm. The forest's breath slowed, its hunger momentarily appeased. The watcher's consciousness scattered among the roots, thousands of fragments carried through the vast network of memory and decay. Each one whispered a name, each one a plea, each one soon forgot. Above, dawn light filtered through the canopy, soft and golden, indifferent to the horror below. The forest appeared serene again, the way it always had after every cycle, silent, waiting, patient. Somewhere deep beneath, the watcher's last thought shimmered faintly before fading. It never ends. It only remembers. Morning brought no warmth. The forest glistened under dew, but every drop shimmered faintly red when the light touched it. Birds called without melody, their sounds clipped short as though caught in their throats. The forest seemed emptied, yet beneath that calm stretched an unspoken tension, the hush before an inhale. Deep under the roots, the watcher's fragmented mind drifted in the current of the forest's memory, feeling each heartbeat as vibration through soil. But the forest had changed. Its rhythm was slower, uneven, and now infused with something foreign, the pulse of the newcomer, still fighting against absorption. The watcher's awareness brushed against them through the roots, feeling their confusion, their screams, their desperate clinging to self. The forest murmured in reply, soothing, coaxing, pulling them deeper. The watcher wanted to intervene to stop the cycle, but each attempt dissolved into whispers the forest reabsorbed like breath. The watcher's consciousness drifted higher through roots and bark until vision broke the soil's skin. The forest's surface lay pristine, untouched by its own crimes. But the silence was wrong. The absence of sound felt dense, pressing against thought like weight. Then came the murmurs, faint, human, overlapping, carried through the air as if from distant memory. Shapes flickered at the edge of vision, figures walking among the trees, translucent, endlessly repeating their final moments. Each spoke silently, their lips forming pleas that could no longer be heard. The watcher recognized one, the traveler, eyes wide, movements frantic but futile. Their image faded with the fog, reappearing farther away, trapped in a loop. The forest did not haunt, it recorded. It kept every intrusion as imprint, preserving the trespassers as echoes. And those echoes whispered now, 1,000 layers of regret, building towards something unbearable. By dusk, the silence deepened until the air itself seemed solid. The forest was watching, its awareness pulsing through every living thing, insects, leaves, even the stones beneath roots. The watcher's fragmented self gathered within a single tree, drawn to its heartwood where the pulse was strongest. From within the trunk, they saw the forest through amber resin, distorted, trapped. Beneath the soil, the newcomer's resistance weakened. The watcher felt it as tremors through the wood, each fading beat like a voice slipping beneath waves. The forest began to hum again, a low, resonant vibration that carried through every leaf. That hum birthed shapes, drifting lights resembling fireflies but cold to the touch. They floated upward, flickering, each one the departing fragment of a consciousness finally claimed. The watcher's sorrow deepened, but the forest felt only hunger, eternal and patient, as it consumed what it had gathered. Night came heavy. Stars vanished behind the canopy, and the air carried no sound, not even wind. The watcher felt themselves dissolving again, slipping between layers of the forest's collective thought. Memories that weren't theirs flooded inward. Children laughing, firelight, chanting, all from lives long buried. Each image bled into another until the watcher couldn't tell which memories were human and which belonged to the trees. The silence wasn't absence anymore. It was fullness, a density of thought pressing outward from the roots. The watcher screamed within it, but the forest spoke through that same mouth, its tone calm, inevitable. There is no death here, only returning. The Watcher felt the truth of it echo through every living cell. They were no longer separate. The horror was not what the forest did to people. The horror was realizing that they had become the forest itself, forever watching, forever remembering. The forest dreamed. Within that dream, time fractured, folding each past moment into the next. The Watcher drifted somewhere at the edge of awareness, one voice among thousands, murmuring in the endless chorus. The forest's heartbeat slowed, lulled by its own satisfaction, until even the hum became faint. Then, from the distance, a new sound stirred. Footsteps on the path again, the faint metallic jingle of a lantern. The Watcher felt the tremor ripple through the soil, the cycle beginning anew. But something was different this time. A whisper among the roots that did not belong. It was the Watcher's own, faint but defiant, echoing through the vast network of wood and stone. Turn back. The forest shivered, uncertain for the first time. The silence deepened, waiting to see if the voice would fade or grow. Above, the lantern's light flickered, hesitated, and then kept moving forward. The forest stirred uneasily beneath the returning glow. Each step the traveler took pressed light into the fog, forcing shadows to retreat, but only slightly. The air felt charged, electric, as if the woods themselves were resisting this intrusion. Deep beneath the surface, the Watcher's fractured consciousness shuddered, sensing the disturbance ripple through the root veins. For the first time since merging with the forest, they felt the faint pulse of separation, individuality clawing back from the soil. The lantern's light was different. It didn't flicker or wane, and its warmth cut through the fog like a heartbeat out of rhythm with the forest's own. The Watcher reached for it through unseen channels, threads of thought stretching upward. When the lantern beam passed over the carved idols, their eyes glimmered, not with malice, but warning. The forest groaned, the trees bending as if in pain. Something within it feared that light. The Watcher's voice, faint and scattered, began to surface through the hum of roots. It came as a tremor beneath the traveler's feet, as wind, threading through hollow branches. Do not open what remembers you. The traveler froze, spinning toward the sound, but found only the slow drip of condensation from the trees. Yet the forest reacted violently. The roots shuddered, their glow dimming to a deep, bruise-colored pulse. The Watcher, desperate, pushed harder against the boundaries of the forest's control, their awareness splitting further with each effort. The soil shifted as if something massive rolled beneath it, and from the shadows came the low hiss of voices, the forest speaking in tongues of decay. The traveler raised the lantern higher, its light steady and unwavering. The Watcher felt it burn through the dark network, a radiance carving fractures in the forest's shared memory. The first wound it had ever felt. A sudden gust swept through, tearing loose decades of leaves and bone charms from the branches. The forest's hum shifted pitch, becoming frantic, disharmonious. The traveler pressed forward, unaware that each step deepened the wound between the Watcher's lingering consciousness and the living memory of the woods. The Watcher's fragments began to rejoin, drawn toward the light, coalescing into something that almost resembled form. The forest screamed, not in sound but in vibration that made every living thing shudder. Trees split open, releasing black sap that steamed where it touched the ground. The Watcher forced themselves upward through the soil, forming out of mist and ash, a ghost half-grown from the roots. Their voice finally broke free, raw and jagged. Run! The traveler looked into the mist and saw a figure forming. Not monster, not man, but reflection, pleading through the light. The Watcher's shape solidified, dripping soil and shadow. Their voice was clearer now, resonant, threaded with the forest's echo, but distinct within it. It remembers through us, they whispered, each word flickering the lantern's flame. The forest howled, the very air twisting into spirals of fog and dust. Roots lunged from the ground, coiling like serpents, but faltered where the light struck. The traveler stepped closer, defying instinct, their lantern extended like an offering. The watcher recoiled not from fear, but from the unbearable warmth. The light illuminated their body, revealing bark fused to flesh, eyes that reflected the night sky, and a mouth trembling with pain. It wants to be seen, they breathed, but never understood. The forest wailed louder, branches snapping in protest. The watcher reached forward, hand trembling, their touch brushing the lantern's glass, and for the first time, the forest screamed in agony. Light burst outward, silent, but overwhelming. It washed through the forest like fire without flame, passing through every tree, every idol, every fragment of bone. The watcher felt the surge rip through their being, not destruction, but release. The forest's hum fractured into chaos, 1,000 overlapping voices howling as memory unraveled. Each root that had bound souls to the soil tore free, their glow fading into ash. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The traveler dropped the lantern, its glass unbroken, but its flame extinguished. The watcher looked up, body collapsing into vapor, whispering the last echo of their thought into the air. End the remembering. The fog thinned, and for the first time in centuries, the forest was silent. Truly silent. The trees stood bare and shivering, the soil dark but lifeless. Yet deep beneath the ground, something faint pulsed once, steady and patient, as though waiting for the next light to appear. Dawn crept through the trees like a hesitant intruder, its light thin, pale, and almost afraid to touch the ground. The traveler knelt in the clearing, surrounded by the remnants of what the night had torn apart. The forest stood motionless. No whisper of wind, no murmur of insects, only the faint crackle of cooling roots beneath the soil. The air smelled of ash and wet stone. The watcher's essence lingered at the edges of the light, formless, diffused through the mist that still clung to the trunks. They had no shape now, only memory. The forest silence was heavy, filled not with peace, but with absence. The traveler looked up, their eyes catching the faint shimmer of something unseen. And for a moment they seemed to listen, as if a voice, softer than breath, were guiding them. The watcher's final whisper drifted through the air, almost tender. "Don't stay." The traveler rose unsteadily, their boots sinking into the damp soil that pulsed faintly beneath. The forest felt alive still, but subdued, like a beast that had been wounded too deeply to move. Every step forward stirred echoes, faint reflections of laughter, screams, and murmurs from centuries past, but all muted, as if trapped beneath glass. The watcher's awareness flickered within the mist, fading further with each passing moment. They could no longer feel the forest's mind pressing against theirs. The hum had quieted to a heartbeat long forgot. Yet, beneath that stillness was something unfamiliar. Peace. The cycle had not ended, but paused, suspended between memory and forgetting. As the traveler moved toward the tree line, the mist began to thin, sunlight warming the world once more. For the first time, the watcher felt what it meant to let go, to become nothing but the echo of a warning. By midday, the woods appeared ordinary again. Sunlight scattered through green leaves, and the scent of pine masked the rot that had ruled the night. Yet the traveler paused once more, sensing something beneath the calm, a resonance too faint to name. A single tree stood apart, older than the rest, its bark darkened and slick. Carved into its trunk were strange markings, half erased but pulsing faintly red when the light touched them. The traveler reached out, fingertips brushing the grooves. For an instant their vision blurred. Flashes of fog, a face of bark and sorrow, the endless whisper of roots beneath the world. Then it was gone. The air was still. The traveler stumbled back, heart pounding, the forest indifferent once more. Behind them the markings shimmered briefly, as though breathing, and from deep within the soil came a faint murmur. The watcher's voice, patient, waiting. That night, long after the traveler had left the woods behind, the forest began to move again. Not violently, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the first breath of a dream. Mist rose from the earth, curling around roots and stones, carrying with it faint voices that no longer screamed. The Watcher's consciousness had dissolved entirely now, but traces of their will remained, woven through the hum of the soil, the pulse of the roots, the rhythm of the leaves in wind. The forest was not cruel, only ancient. It could not die, only change. The memory of pain, fear, and intrusion had become part of its marrow. Beneath the surface, new roots began to grow, stretching toward where the lantern's light had once burned. The forest's whisper was softer now, almost kind, as if humming to itself. We remember to remain. Years later, travelers would speak of the forest in hushed tones, how no birds sang near its heart, how compasses spun when crossing its borders, and how sometimes they heard a whisper just beyond the fog. Some claimed the trees leaned closer when spoken to. Others swore they saw faces in the bark, listening. The truth was simpler, though none would ever know it. The forest was not haunted. It was remembering. Deep below, where the Watcher's final whisper had taken root, a single lantern lay buried in the dark, its glass unbroken, its flame extinguished but warm. The soil pulsed faintly with each passing season, waiting, patient. And on certain nights, when the mist is thick and the world forgets to breathe, a glow rises again between the trees, not a warning, not a threat, but a memory waiting to be seen.